And what I believe they were trying to do with that in this talent tier is to give you a go-between. So in a case where you didn't care about mana and you just want to do the most healing, you go with Trail of Light. In a case where you really cared about mana regen, even at the expense of healing, you would use Enlightenment.
Okay.
If you wanted a go-between where it didn't give you as much mana regen as Enlightenment, you only saved what you would spend on the cast of additional renews, but it gave you some additional healing because those renew refreshes actually amount to some healing. It's sort of like a middle of the road between the two.
Yeah, I see that. I'm gonna say that I don't know though if I like that middle of the road because it forces you to play differently.
No, I mean, how many cases are you going to want to not go all out on regen or all out on
Right,
heals?
exactly.
You know, it's going to be one of the two. So
And then like the plus side is more renew ticks. Like, come on.
well, if you had the legendary,
Yeah.
and
Okay.
are able to, you know, if you're able to
Yeah.
refresh it, you're refreshing it
Yeah.
for that much longer.
Okay, that makes.
So I could see it maybe picking up in value there as a middle of the road ability, but again, it's supposed to be a situational ability, and if we had a kit that was more centered around, like if Renew worked with Serendipity, for example, if there
Yeah.
was some
Oh, that'd be
incentive
nuts.
to cast it,
Right.
then, you know, Enduring Renewal, you might pick up in value. We might go back to using other spells. Another thing is Binding Heal works with Enduring Renewal, so all three targets that it heals all refresh renews because they're all treated as direct heals. So it's possible to use Binding Heal to help juggle renews a lot. So that's part of the Jazz Rune from Paragon. He used to heal that way with Serenity all the time. If you go back and look at his what is it? His Black Hand kill, for example.
Right.
I think he did like over 100k healing on Black Hand with the Holy Priest using Serenity healing. Nobody else is able to touch that kind of numbers with Holy Priest. He was #1 ranked.
Right.
But yeah, that was like, I don't know. It was an interesting healing style back in the day and everything. There were times when it was useful when people were all spread out and stuff like that. But I don't know, man. It seems like Trail Lighter Enlightenment is the way to go right now.
Yeah, that's what it's looking like.
I mean, Enlightenment definitely for those fights where you're wanting to do more prayer of healings and stuff like that, and where you're going to want to do a lot of the single target heals anyway, then you know, you go with Trail of Light, you get a little bit of extra healing along with that.
So what do you think about oh my gosh, your like mastery haste? What is your
Priorities and stuff?
Yeah, your stat priorities.
So
Is there
I've
break
done some
points for haste that you need to be hitting?
No, not really. So the break points are gone now. Even Mindbender, I think, for other specs, the break points are now gone. It now dynamically updates. That I think was the last holdout for haste break points. But no, haste doesn't. Okay, I've actually done some spreadsheeting on this and stuff, and when I've been doing some kind of crappy healing in main raid lately, and just, you know, because I've been I don't know if you saw some of the numbers from recent weeks. I actually went in with a high haste build to test it out.
Okay.
And just experimenting with it, and I've also been trying to run numbers on it. So what I figured out is that, and I can't find my spreadsheet right now, but I won't bore you with all the numbers, but basically what it amounts to is haste has a bit of it's still valuable, right? Because you're able to although there's not hard break points, there's not like, okay, once you get to this point then you start doing more healing with the spell or whatever. That doesn't happen anymore, but within a certain time frame, if you have a certain amount of haste, it increases your cast speed. so that you're able, after a certain kind of range of haste, you're able to get off an additional cast within a block of time.
Yep, that
right?
makes sense.
So,
Absolutely.
now you can
With your
still,
GCDs and whatnot.
yeah, exactly. So, still, that an equivalent amount of haste going toward other abilities is going to, I mean, like mastery is by far the best stat.
Really? For Holy Priest?
For Holy Priest, mastery is the new best stat. Now, while leveling, you'll of course want to go for damage spells or stats, crit, haste, versatility. You know, you want to avoid mastery because mastery does nothing for your damage.
Right.
But after you've finished leveling, mastery is your best stat, followed by crit, which is basically, it's kind of like multi-strike was for us, right?
Yeah.
But mastery just does so much healing for us. Even in 5-mans, it does a lot of healing. The haste is probably going to be. It's the difference between haste and versatility. Most people would have said that. Basically, what I'm saying is that it should be mastery, crit, followed by versatility and haste. But where versatility and haste relate to one another has been like debated, and I think that there's pros and cons for both.
Okay.
So one of the pros for versatility, remember, we don't get a personal defensive.
Yeah.
So, you know, I don't want to stack the stat just to stay alive, but it does have a side effect that it does give us some defensive ability.
Right.
It's also, you know, a flat, constant amount of healing that's dependable, unlike crit.
Well, crit, there's a huge argument about crit, right? Like, a lot of people don't like it because they say it's RNG, but I mean, if you do RNG enough times, it becomes just like statistic, right? Like, statistically, 18% more healing. And then if you crit on something,
healing,
right?
For overall healing, crit's going to be better. But you know, that for consistent, you want both, right? You don't want to have your healing all over the place where you're doing like you're only doing heavy healing when you crit, and otherwise you're doing low amounts of healing. So I don't know. I'm not going to go for versatility.
Right.
I would actually prefer haste up to a point, but you know, like I was talking about, there's these ranges where you get an extra spell cast in and it becomes more valuable. And haste also has a benefit that it interacts with hot mechanics.
Yeah,
so you get more renew healing from haste.
Okay, so is there like, so there's no weird breakpoint with renew?
It's dynamically updated. It rolls over, so you get like if you get an amount of haste that's over a breakpoint, it gives you like a smaller extra tick, so there's none wasted.
Okay, that's cool. That's cool. So what? Okay, so because
haste also reduces those cooldowns of those two spells I talked about, so that's like a side benefit.
Right.
And as a reactive healing spec, having a little bit faster cast bar can make you faster to react and deliver your spells. So, also, the faster you deliver spells that proc mastery, the more you benefit from your mastery. So there's a synergy there between haste and mastery, but it's because of the negative impact haste has on your mana, it's still going to be a lower priority than both mastery and crit.
So, because there might be fights where we have to switch, right? Like either we're both playing disc or we're both playing holy, right? It's just probably going to happen for intense fights versus like 3 heal fights, right? So the unfortunate thing is that haste is one of Disc Priest's best things. It's like haste versatility is like 1-2.
It's the best, isn't it, for atonement healing?
Yeah, so it is the best for atonement healing. There's weird things with like smite GCD versus like the actual cast time. It gets so low that the GCD doesn't even catch up. But so there's like weird things where like haste becomes less valuable after it reaches that point. But like for Holy, that's pretty bad to stack haste versatility. And like mastery crit as disc is not, I mean it's not that good. So
Right.
how is that going to impact us? Like, you know what I mean? When we go to switch, do you think it's going to be that crazy that we're just like we might as well not even switch? Or like what changes do you think we'll have to make?
Well,
Because you'll be
I
stacking the exact like we're both going to be stacking the exact opposite of what we shouldn't if when we have to off heal. You know what I
That's
mean?
true. Yeah, that's true. And I think at least at first, we probably need to just stay in our
Oh,
roles
absolutely. I agree.
for at least the foreseeable future until we can amass some extra gear, you know,
Hmm.
to make that a more plausible shift.
Right. And
Um,
like the five, and then for our guild, four heal bosses don't really happen till the last two of the tier, but like they're gonna happen. And if this
well,
monk doesn't work out,
well, I'll tell you what, man. For Emerald Nightmare testing that we did,
yeah.
Disc is really strong.
Is it?
It seemed that way. There was a couple fights where
It's
Disc
just
was like almost ridiculously OP, like because it seemed, I don't know, for me personally, and it could just be because I was bad at it. It seems like the fight where there's less mobile or less movement requirements,
hmm.
Disc really excels because you could sit there and channel damage
Oh
spells,
yeah, just fucking
and crap like that. You don't have to, and also it's kind of complicated to keep up with everything. There's a lot going
oh
on
yeah, there
to keep
is.
track of.
It's nuts.
So when you're not running around all over the place, you can kind of maintain better focus too. So there's a little
Yep.
bit of that, I'm sure.
Yep.
But like I was able to do like some pretty decent uh, amounts of damage as Disc, while doing, okay healing or whatever. But
Yeah, so that's one thing I like about Disc is that they offer whatever your raid needs at that point in time. Like they have AoE, they have single target, they have damage mitigation, they
right,
have DPS, and like there's no point of me just sitting there like with my thumb up my ass when there's no healing going out. Well, they needed to go out, right? Like now I can switch to damage, and then oh shit, healing's about to come. 5 seconds later, I switch to an AoE healer. 5 seconds later, I switch
right.
to a single target healer. You know what I mean? Just by switching my rotation. So, so it's really cool in that aspect, but I don't know. I guess I haven't really raid tested with decent healers in a full raid comp. You know what I mean yet?
Yeah,
So,
it will. I've seen the replays and stuff. I pulled up some Warcraft logs of like, people like Total and what's the guy from Exiled Legions?
yep. Yeah.
Yeah, some of these priests are, putting out like disc disc heals that rival the other healing specs, while also doing they're that's the thing. They're going more for heals rather than damage.
Yep.
It really depends on how you want to do it. When I was raiding and raid testing, I was going all out on damage, and in fact, I was using Schism,
Yeah.
which isn't supposed to be optimal for raiding. Because the extra penance you get is supposed to be more optimal for that middle, whatever the middle town is. I forgot what it's
Yep.
called.
Yep. I know what you're talking about.
The one that gives you extra penance
Yep.
balls or whatever.
The bolt. Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, because that's like a flat 30% increase or whatever to
Yeah.
penance.
33. Yeah.
So yeah. So it's like always good, right? But the other one, the one that gives you the defensive penance, I can see that being
That's
useful.
trash, dude.
I could see it being useful only in a situation where you were like in a mythic dungeon or something,
Yeah.
where the tank was just getting wrecked, but I don't
It's
know.
really bad.
Yeah.
Like,
It
there's.
seems that, I mean, it sucks for atonement for sure,
Right.
because you're losing throughput that you would get from either of the others.
Right.
But in Mythic Dungeons, what a lot of people are saying is that they're not using Atonement as much in the higher level Mythics, and they're spending more time spamming Shadow Men.
That's exactly right. Shadow Mend is
So
one of the most casted spells, I'm sure. I just like basically you just cast, you let people, not let them, but they just naturally get to like 70% health, and then you Shadow Mend everyone, and then you just Schism Penance Smite, and then you just pretty much refresh that, which is,
yeah.
and then if you run into trouble, like certain situations, you just start spamming Rapture, or you weave in Light's Wrath, and so it's interesting.
Oh yeah, it's kind of easier in dungeons. I think. I think the raid healing is way more difficult for disc right
Man,
now.
it's like like in your mind there's so much going on. It's like what is optimal at this point in time? I have absolutely no idea, you
Well, for
know.
me, I'll be honest. What was the most problem for me was the fact that we were doing raid testing. I'd never done those raids before. I didn't know what the damage patterns were going to be like,
Right.
and it's all about perfectly lining up your burst with that damage.
Yo.
And if you don't know when that damage is going to come, the reactive healers are just going to heal it up or whatever, or pop a cooldown whenever it
You're
happens
just
or whatever,
and you're
and
just left
you
out to
have no.
dry.
Yeah, exactly. So in many cases, I was like, okay, look, I'm not going to be able to handle the burst heal part. I mean, I was able to do it at some points. I was doing some pretty decent burst, but I was like, I'm just going to stick with Schism and try to do some DPS and see what I can put out. So that's what I ended up doing for the rest of our raid testing. And in some fights, Schism is really good. Like, there's this one fight in the second raid where
Mm-hmm.
you're on like a bridge. This like Gorin boss, forgot what his name is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Real quick. The Croesus.
Oh, an Emerald Nightmare? Or not Emerald Nightmare,
In
Nighthold.
the Nighthold, yeah. Croesus is on like a bridge, and he eats the bridge up.
Okay.
And so you start off at a spot. Somebody gets marked with a debuff, and then everybody has to sidestep. But for the most part, you're just staying in one spot, and you have a single target boss to just wail on, and then you occasionally have to sidestep, and you'll just pop a penance or whatever, and then sidestep, and you can basically just maintain DPS on that sucker the whole time. And you back up as he destroys the bridge. It's the easiest freaking fight in the world as long as the raid knows what they're doing,
Mm-hmm.
and you can do so much damage. I think I don't remember. I'd have to go back and look at the log.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
want to say I did like over 90k.
Yeah, it's pretty decent.
Yeah, so I'm sure my healing was like blah, but it wasn't a really challenging fight for as far as healing goes. Now that might change in Mythic or something,
Right.
with the ads and stuff like that, and like new mechanics or whatever. I haven't looked at a lot of the Mythic mechanics to even see what changes yet. Yeah, I can see potential for disc on those sort of fights, whereas in the fights where oh my gosh, like that.
Ursoc?
Well, the fight that gave me the most trouble. What the frack was that dude? Tichondrius.
Okay.
Oh my god, dude. Okay, so I tried to be disc for that fight. It was just not happen. It was just not happening. There was and for part of it, I think the fight was overtuned.
Okay. Yeah.
So keep that in mind, but also keep in mind that my CPU was going. There's some kind of graphical thing that he does whenever he does like his carrion nightmare attack or whatever.
Okay.
It does like this swarm of bats. And the bats, like apparently it's really CPU intensive where it renders all these different bat positions and dimensions or whatever. And it's a really cool looking effect, but it was like almost hard locking my CPU every time it happened. Well, the problem is when he does that, you have to go hide behind a pillar. Right?
Gotcha.
So my computer was freezing up, and by the time it unfroze, I'm dead. So
Right.
that was after that fight, I was like, forget it, I'm done with this, and I went out and I bought a brand new processor and a water cool setup and everything. So I'm now running something like 4.6, 4.8 per core.
Yeah, yeah.